had wanted to work on the railroad for as long as I could remember. When I was a kid, my bedroom overlooked a single stretch of track that cut through the edge of our town. Every evening I would sit by the window, waiting for the headlights of passing trains to appear in the distance. I never cared where they were going. I just liked watching them disappear into the darkness. Years later, that childhood fascination became my career. At 28, I was hired as a locomotive engineer for North Valley Rail, a regional company that operated freight trains across 3 states. Most of my shifts were uneventful. Long hours, empty countryside, and the constant rhythm of steel wheels against the rails. After a while, you stopped noticing the noise. But there was one route that nobody ever wanted. Officially, it was called Route 16. Among railroad crews, it had another name, the Silent Run. The route only operated after midnight, carrying maintenance equipment and empty freight cars through a remote section of forest where there hadn't been a town for nearly 40 miles. Nobody could ever explain why experienced engineers kept asking to be transferred away from it. They simply did. My first assignment there wasn't supposed to happen. Another engineer called in sick an hour before departure, and dispatch needed someone available. That someone happened to be me. "You'll be riding with Mason," the dispatcher said while handing me the paperwork. "Good guy." He looked up for only a second. "He doesn't talk much." When I reached the locomotive, Mason was already sitting in the engineer's seat, checking the instrument panel. He looked to be somewhere in his 60s. Gray beard, weathered face. The kind of man who had probably spent more time on locomotives than at home. He nodded once as I climbed into the cab. "You must be Daniel." "That's me." He extended a rough hand. "Mason." Nothing else. No small talk. No introduction. A few minutes later, the dispatcher cleared us to leave. The locomotive growled to life, and we slowly pulled out of the yard. For almost an hour, neither of us said much. The city lights disappeared behind us. Roads became fields. Fields became endless forest. Rain began tapping softly against the windshield. Only then did Mason finally speak. "First time on 16? "Yeah." He kept watching the tracks. "You'll remember it." I laughed. "Bad tracks?" "No." He paused. "Bad timing." I frowned. "What does that mean?" Instead of answering, he pointed ahead. A weathered sign stood beside the rails. Route 16 beyond it, the trees seemed to close around the track like walls. The radio signal crackled once, then disappeared completely. "No reception?" I asked. "Not out here." He reached over and turned the radio off completely. "You won't need it." That struck me as odd. Railroad procedure required the radio to stay on. I looked at him. "Aren't we supposed to?" "You'll understand." His voice remained perfectly calm. The train continued deeper into the forest. Everything outside looked strangely identical. The same pine trees, the same fog, the same darkness. After another 20 minutes, I noticed something that made me check the dashboard clock. It was still reading 1:17 a.m. I blinked. Maybe I had imagined it. Several minutes passed. I looked again. 1:17. The second hand wasn't moving. Neither was the digital backup display beside it. Both clocks had frozen at exactly the same time. I pulled out my phone. No signal. The screen lit up.
1:17 a.m.
Every clock in the cab had stopped. I looked at Mason. "Our clocks are broken." He didn't even glance at the dashboard. "I know. You knew this would happen?" He gave a slow nod. "It happens every time." A chill ran through me. I laughed nervously, hoping he was joking. "Is this some kind of prank they play on new engineers?"
No.
He stared through the windshield. "Just don't look too long at the trees." I frowned. "What?" Before he could answer, something caught my eye. Someone was standing beside the tracks. A man. Dark clothes. Motionless. He stood only a few feet from the rails, his face hidden beneath the shadow of a hood. As we rushed past, I instinctively turned to keep looking. He never moved. A mile later, there he was again, the exact same figure, standing in exactly the same position, watching the train pass. "Did you see that?" I asked. I told you not to look. Mason's voice stayed flat. My stomach tightened. No. That's impossible. Another curve. Another stretch of forest. Another hooded figure. Same posture. Same distance from the rails. Like someone had copied and pasted him along the entire route. I stopped looking outside. The cab suddenly felt much smaller. The engine hummed steadily beneath us. Then, the horn blasted. Neither of us had touched it. The deafening sound echoed through the forest. At that exact moment, every light inside the cab flickered. Once, twice, then everything went dark. Only the headlights remained. For 3 or 4 seconds, we drove through complete darkness. When the interior lights returned, someone was sitting in the empty jump seat behind us. I spun around. The seat was empty. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it. I know, Mason interrupted. Don't turn around again. His calmness scared me more than anything else. Why aren't you stopping the train? Because we can't. He pointed ahead. The track stretched straight into the darkness. There isn't a switch for another 20 miles. I swallowed hard. Then the radio came alive. Not with static. With a voice. Still there. The words were barely audible. Don't stop. Silence. Then another sentence. It wants you outside. The speaker clicked off. I reached for the radio. Mason grabbed my wrist before I touched it. Leave it. What was that? No one alive. Neither of us spoke again. Minutes passed. Or maybe hours. There was no way to tell. Every clock still read. 1:17. Finally, distant lights appeared through the trees. The forest ended as suddenly as it had begun. The dashboard clock jumped forward. 1:18. My phone immediately found a signal. The radio filled with normal railroad chatter. Everything felt ordinary again. We rolled into the maintenance yard without another word. As I climbed down from the locomotive, I turned back toward Mason. What is Route 16? He shut down the engine before answering. Years ago, a freight train stalled out there after midnight. I waited. The crew got out to inspect the brakes. His expression never changed. They were found the next morning. What happened to them? They were all standing beside the tracks. He looked toward the dark tree line beyond the yard. None of them remembered leaving the locomotive. I felt a knot form in my stomach. So why keep running trains through there? Mason gave a tired smile. Because the tracks are still needed. He climbed down and started walking away. After a few steps, he stopped. Oh, one more thing. I looked back. If you ever wake up and every clock says 1:17, he hesitated. Don't answer anyone knocking at your front door. Before I could ask what he meant, he disappeared into the yard. I drove home just before sunrise. For the first time in years, I couldn't sleep. Around noon, I finally drifted off on the couch. A loud knock woke me. Still half asleep, I looked toward the microwave clock. 1:17 p.m. Another knock. Slow. 3 taps. I reached for my phone. No signal. The apartment was completely silent. Then a familiar voice came through the other side of the door. Calm. Steady. Almost comforting. Daniel. It was Mason. Don't look outside.